All right, here we go. This video will be called The Grand Canyon, The Overlay, The Trees, The Floods, and Babel. And this will be the first part in the series. I will have a number of parts in this series, and this is going to get crazy here, okay? So just hold on. I think at some points as we go through this series, some of you guys may need to just stop and take a breath. Especially as we get into tomorrow's. Tonight will be not so intense to me. Maybe it will be to you. But anyways, here we go. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine you're one of the indigenous people of the Americas. And then suddenly Cortez arrives on your shores. You've lived your whole life in balance. You know the land, you know the rhythms, you have no concept of gunpowder or steel armor. And here comes this force you couldn't have even imagined. And in just a few hundred men, they topple entire civilizations. That's exactly what happened to us on a planetary scale. Humanity wasn't prepared for what came. We were fifth-dimensional beings, naturally living in heaven. But not heaven far away, heaven here. The overlay hadn't been dropped yet. We were aligned with the vertical spiral. Our heart and spirit were tuned to the higher resonance. And then it hit. The invasion of the lower chakras. The hijacking of perception into survival. Lust, fear, domination. Just like Cortez overwhelming the natives, it wasn't about numbers. It was about introducing an energy we weren't ready for. That's what I mean I say the overlay. It's like a false skin projected over reality. A hijack that makes us see through the lens of fear and limitation instead of spirit. That's why people who die and come back always say the afterlife is so beautiful. They say, I saw colors I can't even describe. It's because when you die, the overlay drops and you see what's actually right here, right now. The true world isn't gone, it's masked. Now let's talk about the world trees. These weren't just giant plants, they were the axis mundi, the living ladders that connected realms. Myths call them Yggdrasil, the Bifrost Bridge, the trees of heaven. And they weren't metaphors. Each world tree was a vertical plasma conduit, a living resonance channel stretching up into higher bands of reality. See, travel between realms wasn't about climbing like a monkey up a trunk. It was about phase shifting at the nodes. So you know how a branch will break off and they'll have these little nodes on them right here? This is how we used to travel up and down the world trees because we weren't bodies like this. We were our normal etheric bodies. These bodies are just the overlay, the projection. There's actually two projections going on simultaneously. So every branch node was a resonance station. You'd align your frequency there and it would tune you upward to the next realm. What they called Asgard, or the heavens, the other realms, right? The temples, the star forts, the so-called castles we find fossilized into mesas and canyon walls. Those were the tuning stations. They weren't random. They were built onto the natural nodes of the trees, places where spirit and matter already crossed. Now, the Grand Canyon is one of the most important examples. But look at it again with new eyes. Those so-called caverns, the castles that we think are melted from plasma in the sky, okay? They're not caverns at all. They're nodes. They're vascular chambers of a giant tree's root system. I'm going to take you through a few pictures here, right? So we all thought that these were like little castles that were melted everywhere, right? And it is melted, but they're not castles. So very large trees will have these different types of cavities in them, but they're usually at the very bottom. These will be like nodes. So this is our hut that we all think. It's the downward part underneath the tree that we all call these melted huts, right? This is the natural cavity that's under the tree, all right? So it was never melted castles. Now, there's all kinds of stuff around there, right? So I'm not saying that ain't true, all right? That was definitely Egyptian culture there in the Grand Canyon, but what we see is melted. That's not, those weren't melted castles anywhere. So they're nodes, the vascular chambers of a giant tree's root system. Most stumps we see around the world, like Devil's Tower or Table Mountain, are clean cuts. They were severed higher up, above ground. That's why they look flat and columnar. No inner cavities exposed. But the Grand Canyon was a different kind of cut, a hybrid cut. It went deep into the root base. It didn't just shear the trunk, it sliced into the underground vascular crown, exposing the nodes. That's why we see those hollowed chambers in the canyon walls. People call them caverns or even melted huts, but really they're fossilized nodes of the tree's biology. And that's the key. Caverns are how they look to us now. Nodes are what they truly are. The reason we can see them here is because the canyon's excavation went low into the base. Think of it like this. If you cut a tree at its trunk, you see the wood fibers. But if you cut into the root crown, you see the knots of the hollowed chambers. That's the Grand Canyon. To make it clear, I'll show one simple comparison. If you've ever seen a branch broken off a tree in your yard, you've seen that little swelling, that round scar where the branch used to be. That's a branch node. Now scale that up millions of times, and you've got the buttes, the mesas, inside the Grand Canyon, Isis Temple, Vishnu Temple, Zoroaster Temple, all branch nodes on the same giant tree. I just wanted to go through a few more pictures here so you can really get the idea of what I'm saying. Here's the petrified fibers. These are where the nodes are. So when they cut into it, they cut it at an angle all the way into the ground like that. And it got cut into here. Let me show you another picture. Now these are two different possible scenarios for the Grand Canyon. You have the node erosion. Both of them show the cut. The hybrid cut or the normal cut. And what we did determine is that it was a hybrid cut as far as the way the tree was cut, obviously. We looked at different things too as far as the erosion in the Grand Canyon, how it might have formed. We look at the slurry floods. We looked at different timelines. Petrified fibers. This is very important, okay? The decay rate of petrification is extremely important, and we're going to get into that here soon. Let me give you one more example here. So it's the cut that forms the river. It's literally the cut of the tree that forms the river. And these are just some, so I'm trying to show you here that this plasma, when the tree is cut, sometimes it's controlled if it's cut straight flat, but if it's cut on these hybrid cuts like this, the plasma at the bottom is electrified, just like electricity would be on a piece of wood. And it vitrifies everything in its path when it's not controlled like that. I'll stop here and we'll move into the second part of part one. But I want you guys to really visualize the scale of what I'm saying. The entire Grand Canyon was 10 different node trees as kind of one. How do you cut something this big? And I don't think you guys can visualize this. A tree is 25,000, or these trees, some of them scaled up to 25,500 miles tall. The Great Dome that is above us is billions of miles tall, okay? Billions. The waters, the dark waters, are above the Great Dome. The other dark waters are right around us, just outside the dome. just below us. But we'll jump into the next one.